Marcus Conte, thank you all for your concerns about my well-being. I'm fine. It's Tuesday. It's Monday, the 18th of June, 2018. Summer's hot as hell in New York. Just walked in. It's hot. It's hot out there. It's hot out there, baby. So I took a little bit of a step backwards. I took a little step back, a little retreat, and I was trying to. I didn't want to become the guy who just repeats everything, just repeating the same things over and over again. And so I let other people think for me for a while. I lean on my heroes, and one of my heroes is a writer named Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges he did an exceptional piece a while ago where he basically described how the velocity of money and the concept of a velocity of money. You hear the sirens in the background? Welcome to New York. Velocity of money, but that's not what he's talking about here. He did a piece and it came out on it's actually about a month old, the article, but it was very profound when I read it because it echoes in very very eloquent terms the state of our being right now, state of America, the political situation in America. And Chris Hedges gets a lot of shit for being a doomsday prophet, like a guy who he's predicting the end in this piece, the coming collapse. So the Trump administration did not rise prima facie like Venus on a half shell from the sea. Donald Trump is the result of a long process of political, cultural, and social decay. He is a product of our failed democracy. The longer we perpetuate the fiction that we live in a functioning democracy, that Trump and the political mutations around him are somehow an abbreviant deviation that can be vanquished, gotten rid of in the next election, the more we will hurtle towards tyranny. The problem is not Trump. It is a political system dominated by corporate power and the mandarins of two major political parties in which we don't count. We will wrest back political control by dismantling the corporate state. This means massive and sustained civil disobedience. It's pretty heavy. The Democratic Party, which helped build our system of inverted totalitarianism, is once again held up by many on the left as the savior. Yet the party steadfastly refuses to address the social inequality that led to the election of Trump and the insurgence of Bernie Sanders. The Democratic Party is deaf, dumb, and blind to the very real economic suffering that plagues over half the country. It does not fight for pay workers. It does not fight to pay workers a living wage. It does not defy the pharmaceutical industrial industries to provide Medicare for all. It will not curb the voracious appetite of the military that is disemboweling the country and promoting the prosecution of futile and costly foreign wars. It will not restore our lost liberties, including the right to privacy, freedom from government surveillance, and due process. It will not get corporate and dark money out of politics, the Democrats. It will not demilitarize our police and reform a prison system that has 25% of the world's prisoners, although the United States has only 5% of the world's population. It plays to the margins, especially in election season, refusing to address substantive political and social problems, and instead focuses on narrow cultural issues like gay rights, abortion, and gun control in our particular species of anti-politics. This is a doomed tactic, but one that is understandable. The leadership of the party, the Clintons, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Tom Perez, are creations of corporate America. In an open and democratic political process, one not dominated by party elites and corporate money, these people would hold no power at all. They know this. They would rather implode the entire system than give up their position of privilege. I'll stop right there and do a little commentary. I mean, that's precisely what I feel like I've been saying the whole time, that the Democrats are wholly owned, the corporate media as well, wholly owned by the corporations, and that only an act of civil disobedience, whatever that looks like. I've said, young people, don't join the military, take your student loans, throw it in the garbage. Whatever that comes to mean, civil disobedience is something that will be defined later. But he's talking about the impotence of the Democratic Party, but he also mentions something pretty startling. Trump, he bashes Trump for having his finger on the pulse of America, right? Which is, I want to find the part where he says it, because he says it in a way that I couldn't possibly have said myself. Trump has tapped into the hatred that huge segments of the American public have for a political and economic system that has betrayed them. He may be inept, degenerate, dishonest, and a narcissist, but he aptly ridicules the system they despise. His cruel and demeaning taunts directed at government agencies, laws, and the established elites resonate with people for whom these agencies, laws, and elites have become hostile forces. And for many who see no shift in political landscape to alleviate their suffering, Trump's cruel and invective are at least cathartic. He's basically saying that Trump caters to the anger and the frustration with most Americans at their government, and he does it so successfully and so maybe unconsciously. Maybe he was just the right guy to do it, but he also, Trump, like all deposits, has no depots, has no ethical core. He chooses his allies and appointees based on their personal loyalty and fawning obsequiousness to him. I'm killing these words. He will sell anyone out. I just want to, I encourage you to read the article on your own, but here's where he says, but the warnings from the architects of our failed democracy against creeping fascism, Madeleine Albright among them, are risible. They show how disconnected the elites have become with the zealots. None of these elites have credibility. They build the edifice of lies, deceit, and corporate privilege that made Trump possible. And the more Trump demeans these elites, and the more they cry out like Cassandras, the more he salvages his disastrous presidency, enables them to pillage the country as it swiftly disintegrates. Read it for yourself, right? What he's saying is that although Trump is accurate in pointing out the corruption with the Clintons, the emails, the mishandling of classified information, the Awan brothers, the mystery man in Congress, the mystery Pakistani guy, the corruption within the FBI, Comey, McCabe, all the Page, the rest of them, right? The Clintons, the Clinton Foundation, the quid pro quo, the election fraud against Bernie Sanders. The more he points this out, the more he taps into the rage of Americans, and the more nothing happens. Right? That's insane when you think about it, because it's exactly what we've seen. That in itself, exposing the corruption in these times of harsh rejection to the law, where government officials have run amok, it no longer has an effect, because the agencies that are responsible for law enforcement, FBI, CIA, right, even local municipalities, when they're told to stand off and back off a crime or back off an investigation, and allowed not to use their critical thinking and use their discretion, right? Right, and then nothing happens. Nobody is held accountable, right? At the higher levels of government, but instead, people continue to get locked up for having a weapon, having a gun to protect themselves, or substances that are quote illegal, right? But meanwhile, big pharma is almost exclusively responsible for the opioid epidemic in the United States. Nobody does anything about it. So anyway, I don't want to hold you guys too long, but definitely read about it. Let's have a discussion on the thread. I'm not the greatest reader, but I think the takeaway from this article is something that I never really realized. I mean, a lot of us in new media are running very, very hard at the corruption and very much exposing it. But like we saw with, just the latest with this IG report that was supposed to, expose more and more corruption about the Clintons, but it really didn't. All the things that pretty much were revealed were already known. That Comey stood down and found evidence to prosecute, but spun it in a way that any reasonable prosecutor would not have. It's gibberish, right? They're spitting out gibberish, and they're getting people to chase the FBI in a circle. And Trump is exacerbating the problem by tweeting it, and it's just something that it never occurred to me that Chris Hedges touches on, that in effect, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve any of the economic issues in our country. And as you read further on, he goes on to say that rather than the government, once the inevitable collapse of the markets occurs, and he's absolutely right. Anybody who knows a little bit about stock market and banking knows just how fragile that system is. And when it collapses, and the fire rages across the country and people are irate, and the elites retreat into their gated communities, as Chris Hedges says, and let people fend for themselves. It's inevitable. It's inevitable collapse that all the signs are on the wall. I'll just end with that. As a foreign correspondent, I covered collapsed societies, including former Yugoslavia. It is impossible for any doomed population to grasp how fragile the decayed financial, social, and political system is on the eve of the implosion, right? All harbingers of collapse are visible. Crumbling infrastructure, chronic underemployment and unemployment, the indiscriminate use of lethal force by police, political paralysis and stagnation, an economy built on the scaffolding of debt, nihilistic mass shootings in schools, universities, workplaces, malls, concert venues, and movie theaters, opioid overdoses that kill 64,000 people a year, an epidemic of suicide, unsustainable military expansion, gambling as a desperate tool of economic development and government revenue, the capture of power by a tiny corrupt clique, censorship and physical diminishing of public institutions ranging from schools and libraries to courts and medical facilities, the insistent bombardment by electric hallucinations to divert us from the depressing sight that has become America and keep us trapped in illusion. We suffer the usual pathologies of imploding death. I would be happy to be wrong, but I've seen this before. I know the warning signs. All I can say is get ready. All right, so that's Chris Hedges' Doomsday Prophecy, and I encourage you to read it. It's definitely something that it resonated with me. So My name is Marcus Conte. I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. Candidate for the United States Senate. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to, maybe my idea that we can actually have honest people in power and turn the boat around, and Medicare for all, and free college tuition at state universities, and close the tax loopholes, take back our corporations, jail the criminals. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is too late. I don't know, but I'm still here, and I'm going to keep talking about it. And when I'm wrong, I'm going to promptly admit it. And I think that I don't know. I might not be alone in that wrongness of chasing after the Clinton Democratic corruption. So, peace out.